In a world where pain and loneliness often go unseen, animals remind us of something powerful, that love, loyalty, and courage can come from the most unexpected places. No one could get close to the dog. He growled, snapped at the air, and darted away from every hand that tried to help. It wasn't anger that lived in his eyes. It was something quieter and colder, the kind of fear that comes from being disappointed too many times. At Willow Creek Animal Rescue, volunteers started calling him Frost, because his coat was snow white and because he slipped into corners like winter fog whenever anyone approached. They'd pulled him out of a storm drain on the edge of the city, shivering, scarred, and silent. The trainers tried everything. Treats placed gently at the threshold. Toys tossed with soft voices that said, "It's okay, buddy." Hours sitting on the ground, not looking at him, just breathing. But Frost wouldn't let a soul get close. He barked when they lingered, backed into the farthest corner of the kennel, pressed himself to cinder block like he could disappear inside the wall. When someone moved too quickly, he showed his teeth with a warning that said, "Don't make me choose between running and biting." He never lunged to harm. He just didn't believe anyone could be trusted. Whispers passed between Vevis about the new arrival. "He's all scars," one said, rubbing a forearm as if the memory of the sight could leave marks. "Someone worked him too hard or left him too long. He doesn't know what kindness is." The shift leader, a woman named Marla Green, wrote in his chart, "Fear-based reactivity. Proceed with patience." On a quiet Sunday, the gate buzzer rattled and a teenager rolled into the yard in a wheelchair. His mother walked beside him, one hand on the back of the chair like she wanted to guide but didn't dare push. The boy's name was Aiden Reyes, 16 years old, dark hair curling over his forehead, eyes that seemed older than they should be. 2 years earlier, a dirt bike crash had taken the use of his legs and almost all of his spirit. He used to launch himself off ramps at the skate park, fearless and loud, a kid whose friends watched to see what he'd do next. After the accident, his world shrank to hospital rooms, therapy halls, and the distance between his bed and the window. He learned silence like a second language. This visit wasn't his idea. It had been his physical therapist's "try animals" and his mother's "try anything." Aiden let them load the chair and drive him to Willow Creek, because he didn't have the energy to argue. He rolled past barking puppies and wagging tails without a flicker in his face. Volunteers opened kennels for practiced, friendly dogs, gentle noses pressed to his hand. Bright eyes asked questions he didn't answer. Aiden's gaze drifted past them all until it caught on a shape in the shade. Behind a welded wire fence, a big white dog stood motionless, head low, body tense. For a breath, Aiden felt like the dog was a statue and he was the one who'd been caught moving. The dog's eyes locked on his, not pleading, not threatening, but steady like 2 winter coins. Aiden stopped. His mother leaned down. "Want to move on?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "No," he said, and his voice surprised them both. "I want to stay." Marla signaled the volunteers to give them space. "Slow, gentle," she murmured. Aiden wheeled himself to the edge of the enclosure, and then he did something no one else had tried. He did nothing. He didn't speak. He didn't reach out. He set the brakes, let his hands rest in his lap, and simply waited. The air in the yard seemed to thin out around that stillness. Dogs in the other pens barked and settled, and the white dog just watched him. Seconds stretched. A minute. 2. Aiden heard his own breath and tried to make it slow. He felt an old familiar loop start up in his head, the one that said this won't work. Nothing works, and he decided to let it pass without answering. Frost shifted his weight, one paw forward, then back. The fur along his spine lifted and smoothed. He sniffed the air near the fence and took one careful step toward the boy in the chair. Marla's hand hovered, palm up, as if she could catch silence if it fell. Frost edged closer, not wagging, not playful, just curious. He stretched his neck until his nose was a handspan from Aiden's fingers, and then, in a move that pulled the breath out of every chest in the yard, he lowered his head and placed it softly on Aiden's knee. Gasps slipped out like birds. Someone whispered, He's never done that before." Aiden didn't smile. He didn't look around to see who was watching. He looked at Frost's scars up close, the thin lines across the muzzle, the thicker ridge along the shoulder where fur grew in a swirled, stubborn direction, and he whispered, "It's okay, I know what it's like to be scared." Frost's eyes flicked, fast and uncertain, then steadied again. He let his weight rest there, light but real, like trust trying itself on for the first time. From that day on, everything was different, but not in a way that made headlines, at least not yet. It was different, like winter thawing a fraction of an inch each afternoon. Aiden came back the next morning, and the next, and the next. He arrived when the yard was quiet, when the volunteers were still sweeping the concrete, and the sun hadn't gone up too far. He didn't ask for the leash. He didn't ask for anything. He just parked beside Frost's kennel and made himself a piece of the landscape that never moved too fast. On the fourth day, Marla opened the gate and froze. Frost didn't retreat. He stepped out with one ear canted sideways, caught between instinct and interest. He looked at Aiden's hands, then at the big wheels of the chair, then at the open yard. Aiden turned his chair just enough to show him a path and waited. They made a slow circle, boy rolling, dog walking close, both of them moving like teed water inching across sand. Frost's shoulder brushed Aiden's knuckles once, and Aiden didn't flinch. Frost leaned a hair more the next lap. By the time the sun climbed and the yard warmed, Frost was walking with his flank against the wheel as if he'd been doing it his whole life. No commands, no leash, just trust. The change made its way around the rescue like electricity. Volunteers who'd been chewed up by false hope felt something tender and uneasy open in their chests. The kennel tech who scrubbed bowls all morning found herself leaning on the mop and smiling at nothing. Marla wrote a new note in Frost's chart. Primary handler, Aiden Reyes, volunteer visitor. Protocol chairside walks. No crowding, reward present. A local journalist heard about it from a friend who'd come to drop off blankets and stayed to cry behind her sunglasses at the fence. The journalist called the rescue. "Can I film a short piece?" she asked Marla. "Human-animal bond. You might get some donations." Marla hesitated. Frost didn't love attention. Aiden didn't either. But the rescue's laundry machines had started making a grinding noise that sounded like rent coming due. "If you do it quietly," Marla said. If the boy agreed, Aiden agreed. Reluctantly. His mother said, "You can say no," and he nodded and then said yes anyway, because saying yes felt like the kind of risk he wanted to practice. The video was 2 minutes long. It had no music, no voiceover, no flashy cuts. It showed a white dog walking beside a wheelchair in the morning light, then lowering his head into the boy's lap and going utterly still. That was it. The quiet did the rest. Overnight, the views ticked up like a thermometer left in the sun. Comments poured in. "I haven't smiled in months. This made me smile. I lost my dad last year. Watching them breathe together helped me breathe. Is the dog adoptable?" Not everyone believed it. "It's a fluke," one trainer from another city scoffed on a forum. "That dog isn't trained. The kid isn't qualified," someone else posted. "Wheelchairs freak dogs out. This is staged." The noise grew. The comments sharpened. The world did what the world does to soft things. It poked them to see if they would break. For a week, Aiden didn't come. He told himself he was busy, but the truth was simpler. Doubt had crept in and sat on his chest, and he couldn't figure out how to lift it off. His mother asked if he was going back, and he said, maybe later, in the voice that means not today. Not yet. Don't ask me again, because I don't know how to say yes right now. At Willow Creek, Frost refused breakfast 2 mornings in a row. He refused walks with the volunteers who loved him and had fed him when he shook in the back of the kennel. He stood at the gate like a sentinel carved out of snow, eyes fixed on the parking lot, body tight with waiting. Marla crouched near him, palms up, voice soft. "He'll come," she said. "You're not wrong, Frost. He'll come." On the 8th morning, Aiden rolled through the gate with his jaws set. He felt ridiculous and brave in equal measure. Before he could speak, before he could apologize to a dog for being a human who hid, Frost was already moving, head down, tail low, straight to him. He pressed his body to the wheel and laid down with a sigh that came from some deep room where words don't go. Aiden reached for his ear, clumsy with relief. "I'm here," he said. "I won't disappear." The rescue invited Aiden to speak at a Canine-Assisted Courage Day, a therapy event for kids with disabilities. At first, he said no. Then Marla said, "You don't have to give a speech. Just show up with him and be yourselves. Sometimes that's the most useful thing." The gym at the community center was bright and echoey, lined with folding chairs, the air smelling faintly of floor polish and anxious hope. Kids rolled in with parents and therapists. Metal crutches clicked. Velcro straps rustled. Some children watched the door like they were waiting for a promise to walk through it. When Aiden came in with Frost pacing precisely at his wheel, the room didn't applaud. It exhaled. They did simple things. Aiden rolled a slow circle while Frost matched him, shoulder to rim. A little boy with a bright red walker reached out with fingers that trembled and touched Frost's fur with the kind of care you offer a miracle. Frost stood like stone, and then softened slowly under the child's hand. A girl with a speech device pressed the picture of a dog, and the device said, "Hello," in a mechanical voice. "Hello," Aiden said back, and Frost flicked an ear like he understood both languages. One little girl had not spoken to anyone but her mother in months. She sat rigid in a small chair, eyes on the floor, hands picking at the seam of her leggings. Aiden asked if Frost could sit by her feet. The girl's mother nodded, biting her lip. Frost lay down slowly, as if approaching a wild bird he didn't want to startle, and put his head on the toe of her sneaker. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then the girl's mouth opened like a door she hadn't realized was unlocked, and a sound came out. Not a word, not yet, but a laugh. Small, real. The room changed temperature when it heard it. That evening, when the gym was empty and the sun sank low over the hills, Aiden and Frost ended up in the field behind Willow Creek, where the grass grew in clumps and the air smelled like dust and warm earth. No cameras, no crowd, just them. Aiden ran his fingers over the ridge of the old scar on Frost's shoulder. "You helped me find myself again," he said. "I didn't know I was still in here." He swallowed. "Maybe we saved each other." Frost wagged his tail once. The restrained kind of wag that means I feel this in my bones. He rested his head lightly on Aiden's footplate. For the first time in 2 years, something that felt like a smile uncurled in Aiden's chest and made it to his mouth. The weeks that followed didn't become perfect. Perfection wasn't the point. There were still nights when pain woke Aiden with its old teeth. There were mornings when Frost froze at the sight of a man in a ball cap and had to sniff the air for a count of 10 before he remembered where he was. Healing didn't arrive like a parade, it arrived like the mail most days, small and steady, sometimes late, always worth checking for. Aiden started volunteering officially. Marla showed him how to log notes, how to read the tightness in a dog's mouth, how to step back when stepping forward would only make the fear louder. Frost became his shadow. On days when new dogs came in shaking and silent, Aiden parked his chair near their kennels and practiced the same stillness that had met Frost at the beginning. He learned that waiting is work, that patience is a muscle you can build. The rescue's laundry finally died with a noise like a 3-car pileup, and the internet rallied. Donations came from strangers who wrote messages in the note line, "For Frost's friends, for the boy who sits quietly, for the days I forgot how to breathe until I watched your video." Willow Creek replaced the machines and painted a mural on the cinder block wall, a white dog and a boy in a wheelchair rolling toward a sunrise. Marla cried when they pulled the top off it, then pretended she'd gotten soap in her eye. Not everyone's mind changed. The world still had people who liked to doubt more than they liked to hope. A trainer with a big following posted, "Bond is not training," to which Marla replied from the rescue account, "Training without Bond is just choreography." The comment thread tried to turn into a fire. Aiden stayed out of it. Frost slept with his head under Aiden's palm and the internet felt far away. On the first anniversary of the day Frost touched Aiden's knee, Willow Creek hosted an open yard afternoon. They didn't call it a celebration, they called it Practice Day, because that's what life had become. Practice. Families came who couldn't afford fees anywhere else. Volunteers set up kiddie pools for dogs who loved water and quiet corners for dogs who didn't. Aiden showed a father how to let his anxious terrier sniff the spokes of the chair until curiosity beat caution. Frost walked the fence line like a calm lighthouse. Near the end of the day, a teen about Aiden's age rolled in with his sister. He had the clamped jaw of someone who'd been told too many times to be positive. He parked at the edge of the yard and didn't move. Aiden recognized the shape of that stillness. He asked if the boy wanted company. The boy shrugged without looking up, which in the language Aiden remembered fluently meant, "Yes, but don't make me say it." Frost went first. He drifted over and stood a careful distance away. The boy's eyes flicked up and down like he was checking for wires. When he didn't see any tricks, he let his hand fall and brush the air near Frost's neck. Frost stepped in, exactly 1 inch, and laid his chin on the metal guard of the footplate. The boy didn't smile, he didn't cry, he took a breath so deep it looked like the first honest one he'd taken all week. A reporter from the local station asked Aiden for a quote before she left. He shook his head. "I don't have anything smart to say," he told her. "Just this. You don't start with courage. You start with being seen. The rest grows." That night, under the soft hum of the rescue's new laundry, Aiden sat with Frost in the staff room while Marla finished paperwork. The dog's breathing filled the space like waves. Aiden thought about the kid in the gym who laughed, about the boy who breathed, about the mother who cried behind sunglasses when her son touched Frost's fur and didn't flinch. He thought about the version of himself who had stared at ceilings for hours and decided there was nothing on them worth looking at. "Do you remember day 1? He asked Frost. "You looked like you wanted to evaporate." Frost thumped his tail. Aiden grinned. "Me too," he said. "I was just better at faking solid." The lights in the yard clicked off 1 row at a time, throwing long shadows that didn't feel threatening anymore. Aiden's mother texted, "Dinner in 20," and he wrote back, "On our way," and it felt like the most ordinary miracle. Before they left, Aiden rolled back to Frost's kennel, not to put him away, but to stand where it had started. He set the brakes and rested his hands in his lap. Frost stood close, shoulder to wheel, then eased his head into Aiden's lap and went quiet. Sometimes healing doesn't come from being strong. It comes from allowing ourselves to be seen by a dog, by a friend, by a world that doesn't always deserve our trust, but sometimes earns it anyway. It comes from choosing to trust and being trusted in return. That's where real courage begins. If this story moved you, don't just scroll on. Like, comment, and subscribe so stories like this can keep reaching the people who need them most. And if you're waiting for your own small miracle, try this. Show up, be still, and let someone or some dog meet you there. This story is more than just about survival. It's about the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, and how sometimes they don't just share our lives, they save them.